Hello everyone, and welcome to this video on how to replace the brake fluid in the front brake system. We're on a Ducati Monster SP, and in the last video I had the bike leant over on the side stand as it makes a nice angle to access the rear brake caliper. Given that I'm going for both calipers on this bike, I've neatly positioned it on the paddock stand so it keeps the bike nice and vertical. Now, one of the things you'll notice with this bike is up at the master cylinder, it's on an angle. So that means that when I push the pads back in the calipers, that fluid's going to push out and potentially spill over to the top. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to remove that silver screw just to the side, and I'm going to position the master cylinder so it's fully upright. That way, when I push the pistons back, the fluid will pour back into the master cylinder here, into the reservoir, and not spill over. Because as we know, brake fluid attacks paintwork. That's something we don't really want to happen on the Ducati. Okay, so I've removed the screw just here, and I've positioned it nice and straight in the rag. So the next step is to remove these screws carefully. And okay, both screws are removed. Means I can pull the cap off, and inside you can see just the top part which hides the seal that's just below that. This plastic seal allows you to get a little bit of air to come into the master cylinder as the oil level drops, but also stops with this seal, stops the oil, the hydraulic oil coming out if the bike tips over. So I pull that up carefully. I don't want to drop any of this fluid on, there goes a bit. I don't want to drop any of this fluid on the paintwork at all. So you can see there's a fair bit of fluid in there, and what I'm going to do next is get a syringe and pull that out. Alright, so as you can see, I've pulled the oil out. If you look over into this corner, that hole just there is where the fluid is going to go through to the master cylinder. So one of the things we need to be really careful now is not to hit the front brake, because if we hit the front brake, there's a good chance it will suck air into the system, and that's what we don't want. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to the calipers themselves, and there are two bolts that we've got to take out. That's this one here and this one here. Now, the interesting thing about the Monster SP specifically is it's got a monoblock caliper. Now, what I found with this is there isn't enough room between the disc and the wheel to pull the caliper all the way off. So all we can do with this is move the caliper back, and we'll have to push the pads back without pulling the caliper completely away from the disc. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, moved over to the other side of the bike now, because just to show you a couple of things on this side. We've got a sensor, wheel speed sensor on here, just this cable here. So what I'm going to do is pull the clips off of that. So that means that is free to move. And that means when I pull this caliper off, it won't be pulling on this cable. And I want to be very careful with the cable itself, because I don't want to damage the wheel speed sensor. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a breaker bar just to pull these two bolts off. These two bolts are tightened up to about 47 Newton meters, so a little bit more than normal. And for that I'm going to use this tool. This is an extending breaker bar, so this will extend as long as I want, but still stay small to go in my toolbox. There we go. This one. Makes it nice and easy with the longer bar. go. Now, as I said before, the thing with these calipers is they're just slightly too big to pull out off the disc. I can't get it off. There's no way it will come through. Otherwise, I'd be able to pull the caliper forward and then I'd be able to push the pads back nice and easily. And because I can't do that, the only way I can do that is to move the back here and push those pads up from here or from the other side. So make sure that's in there. Now what I'm going to do while I do this is, as the pads retreat and move back in very slowly, I'm going to keep an eye on the master cylinder to make sure that it's not overflowing with fluid. So I'm just doing this really gently. And we should have some fluid in the master cylinder now. So you can see there's a little bit more left in there. So I'll keep doing that until they're fully pushed back. Right, so now that I've worked those pads and pistons back a little bit, there's just enough room. Now, if I twist this to get the caliper all the way out, and you can see there's plenty of room in the pads. The pistons are pushed back a fair way. So I'm going to get just a little wedge to stick in there to stop the pads moving back while I push the other side back in. So that'll hold them in place while I go around the other side and do exactly the same with the other caliper. So I've pulled the other caliper away as well. I've used a large flat screwdriver type tool to push those pads back. Got quite a bit of distance between the pads now. So if I look at the master cylinder, you can see there's a little bit more fluid that has come back up in there, pushing those pads back. We don't want any of that because it's all old. So suck that out as well. So now the master cylinder is largely empty of old brake fluid. I'm going to get the new brake fluid and put it in there. Okay, so I'm using Motor's DOT 5.1, but any DOT 4 or 5.1 fluid will do. Just pour a little bit in there. We just need some fluid in there so that when we start bleeding the brakes, we push the old fluid out through the calipers and the new fluid will flow in behind it. So with the fluid in place, the next thing I'm going to do is fit the calipers back on to the discs. And then we torque them to 47 newtons. Put the cable back on. Right. And take the cap off. So now I can refit my bleed kit. So I've got that set up into the bleed bottle. This bleed bottle is made of a silicone tube which doesn't get affected by brake fluid, and it has a non-return valve in the box inside the bottle itself, so it reduces the chance of it pulling any air back up into the system back up this way. But theoretically, all of the fluid should come down through the brake pipes out of this bleed nipple once I've opened it, and out through here. So because I pushed the pads back, I'm going to have to push the brake lever to push the pads back against the brakes. So as I squeeze the brake lever, we're going to see the fluid level drop. And little by little, as those pads get pushed back against the discs. So now, instead of having full travel with the lever, it's now got pressure, and the fluid is not going down any further, but we're on the minimum. So thing to be careful of is not run out of fluid at this point, or you will pump air into your system. So you were quite low, but we're not too low that it's going to suck air in. So I'll put some more fluid in that, and then we'll start bleeding. Okay, so bleed process is going to be me squeezing the brake lever a few times to get pressure, holding that brake lever in, and while I do that, I'm going to use this spanner to open the bleed nipple. As soon as I do that, it's going to force fluid down through the pipes and out through this tube, and the brake lever is going to come back to the bar. So I'll hold it back to the bar and then tighten this spanner, and then I can pump the brake lever again. It's very important that you keep that brake lever pressure on while you loosen and tighten the bleed nipple, otherwise you may pull air into the system. While you're doing this, you also have to keep an eye on the master cylinder to make sure you don't run out of fluid and pump air into the system. So a few things to do. So I'll pump the lever a few times, open the valve with the spanner, fluid comes out, tighten, pump again. Do the same again. Pump the lever, open the valve, brake lever goes loose, tighten the valve, pump the lever. Check the fluid in the master cylinder again, still lots in there, and just do that. Now if this was an old bike with old fluid, we'd see the fluid coming out as orange or a dark colour, and when the new fluid hits it, it will come out clear, so you'll know you've pushed all the fluid through. We only need to push enough that it was in the lines all the way through, because we previously pushed the pads back and pushed all the old fluid up into the master cylinder and sucked it out with a syringe. Now already I can feel that the brake lever is much firmer than it was originally. That tells me I've got fluid fairly well all through the system. We've only done one caliper so far. So one more. There we go. That one's done. So I'll make sure that that's tight. Pull this hose off and then move on to the other caliper. Now we're plugged in the same as on the other side. We're on the right side of the bike now. So I'm going to pump that lever a few times. Slacken that off. Tighten. Release the brake. Pump the brake. Loosen the bleed nipple. Tighten. Release the brake. Check the master cylinder again, still plenty of fluid in there. One more time. so that's tight. And that's that caliper done. Right, so the final job that I have to do here is just put the master cylinder back together again. Needs a little bit more brake fluid. A little bit more. Okay, we're between the max and the min there. So, next steps. The rubber on top. Plastic cap. And the seal. There we go. Right, that's all done. Got the cap on, the screws are tight, it's all clean, it's dry. The little silver screw just here, that's back in as well. So the cap's in its usual position. I've got plenty of pressure on the brake lever, so the job is done. If you like this video, yeah, feel free to hit subscribe and watch out for more work on this and other bikes in the future. All that's left now is to put the sock back on. And we're done.